Hello people of YouTube, Rich from PCGamesN here, and Historical Total War is back in all its intricacy and authenticity, or rather, it's about to be. We recently got the chance to play Total War Thrones of Britannia, a Total War Saga. It's out on April 19th, and here are 9 other things that you need to know about it. Number 1, the setting and the period. The game is set in the British Isles in the year 878 AD, which is the year that Alfred the Great ended the first Viking invasion. In May of that year, he inflicted a comprehensive defeat on the great Viking army at the Battle of Edington, and in the following treaty he let them settle large swathes of northern and eastern England. The region was called the Danelaw because the Vikings lived there under their own laws, but they assimilated in many important ways. Their leader, Guthrum, converted to Christianity and even became Alfred's adopted son, for instance. And in Thrones of Britannia, all of that has only just happened, so it's a tense moment with a lot of violent Vikings just adjusting to life alongside all of the people that they've been fighting for over a decade. We know what happened next in real life, but the whole premise of Total War Sagas is that they'll be set in these powder keg moments of history where what happened next could have been very different. And that's where we come in. Number 2, the players. Thrones of Britannia will feature 10 distinct factions split into 5 different cultural groups. The native cultures are the English, Welsh and Gaelic kingdoms, with the Gaels further subdivided into Irish and Scottish Gaels. Each culture and each faction has its own mechanics. The Gaels' legitimacy trait, for instance, grants them unique bonuses for owning their own cultural land and for defending their allies. More specifically, I got to play as King Flan of the Kingdom of Mead. Those are the Irish Gaels, who get better relations with all Irish factions and are able to organise the Fair of Tailchew, which I'm probably mispronouncing because Irish pronunciation just does what it wants. Anyway, in-game, this fair is a periodic event which grants useful public order and diplomatic bonuses, but which can't be held if your capital is under siege. There are also 2 Viking cultures, one of which is the Great Viking Army, which includes a sub-faction led by Guthrum. Unlike the settled Vikings though, the 5th and final culture are the Viking Sea Kings, who are very much not settled and are still all about the traditional Viking life of raiding, so their cultural mechanics should be interesting to see. Number 3, it's based on the ATTILA engine. The Total War engine had previously iterated from game to game, but CA tell us that essentially it branched at Warhammer 1, meaning that the ATTILA engine is the most recent in the historical series, and as such, it enables a bunch of features that Thrones of Britannia needs which Warhammer doesn't have, some of which we'll discuss later in this list. This means that it feels very like ATTILA to play in terms of UI, map interaction, right down to the little animations that play when one army beats another on the campaign map. But it has had a thorough lick of paint. That map itself is gorgeously detailed, and not in the same fantastical way that Warhammer's is, with dwarven architecture and skulls growing out of mountains, all of that, but rather with deer prancing through forests and lovely seasonal climate changes, that kind of thing. We can probably expect a bigger engine reboot for 3 Kingdoms, the next era-spanning history game, but in the meantime, though the ATTILA engine may be aging, it still looks pretty great. Number 4, units are recruited through technology, not buildings. So unit recruitment is changing in big, exciting ways. Newer or more powerful units are unlocked by researching technologies and then added to a global recruitment pool, rather than being recruited through discrete buildings. There is a limit on the number of units in that pool, with more powerful units having lower caps. Weirder still, you can recruit these units instantly, like that very turn, but they'll appear at 25% of their full strength and then grow to 100% over a number of turns, similarly to replenishment. This is all intended to represent your force's mustering, which feels historically authentic and opens up a number of strategic considerations. If you have the money and the troops in the pool, you can assemble a ragged force very quickly, but you will need several turns to prepare for a bigger campaign. Number 5, techs need to be unlocked. So get ready to spend many turns not researching any technologies. You now need to unlock them before you can research them, and each has different conditions. The next tier of infantry might require you to recruit 10 units from the previous tier first, while an improved catapult might require you to besiege 5 different settlements. This is all intended to represent you having some practice or some expertise in a field of technology before you learn how to improve it, or even that it would need improving. Interestingly, CA tell us that certain civic techs will require access to unique buildings that may not even exist in your starting territory, which effectively locks some technology behind expansion. Number 6, winning. There are 3 different victory conditions in Thrones of Britannia, each of which has got a long version and a short version. There's the standard conquest victory, of course, which we're all familiar with by now. Fighting, sandbox playstyle, map painting, all of that. There's also the fame victory, which challenges you and your faction to accrue a certain level of fame. There are various ways to do this. Conquest is one, but character skills will be another, and building famous churches might be another, as well as possibly some more. Perhaps more excitingly, each faction also has a kingdom victory, which considers their historical aspirations to nationhood and will give you a path to achieving them. The Kingdom of Mead, for instance, aims ultimately to establish the nation of Ireland, whereas Guthrum and the settled Vikings aim to strengthen the Danelaw and then, because they have been nativized, create England. We hear there will also be an ultimate victory, which will unlock if you complete the long version of any of the 3 basic victories. Creative Assembly are keeping the details of that quiet, but they say it will involve a significant endgame challenge. Now that sure sounds like Archaon's invasion at the end of Warhammer, or Attila's invasion at the end of Attila, the game that Thrones of Britannia will evolve from. So what similar events might we see in Britannia's timeline? We have to get an estimate for the timeline first, and an FAQ on the Total War blog says that events in the game will run right up until 1066, which is telling, but I think it's highly unlikely that we'd ever be expected to play the game until then, and here's why. In the build that I played, each turn was a season, meaning that the 188 years between 878 and 1066 would work out to 752 turns. That also makes us doubt fan theories of Canute the Great's invasion in 1016, unless the campaign were to somehow change pace as it goes on. Assuming that doesn't happen, 200 turns, which is a pretty hefty campaign, would only take you to the year 928. The Battle of Brunanburh, though, was in 934, so maybe that's possible. This was a decisive battle between English and Gaelic armies that many historians cite as the founding point for modern England. So that's our guess. Number 7, family trees are back. So family trees return from Attila, and once again, managing them is integral to diplomacy. As before, your character's loyalty will be tracked, and it'll be up to you to keep them in line with a variety of carrots and sticks. Estates are a new carrot. Each region contains a variable number which can be handed out as prizes to bolster someone's loyalty. As before, you can bring new characters into the fold through marriages and adoptions, and if you don't like how they're working out, you can kill them off too. Characters themselves will develop in 3 key areas: stats, traits, and followers. There are 3 stats: command, which gives you bonuses to combat and battle stuff; governance, which gives bonuses to provincial administration on the campaign map, which, as we all know, is where the real battles are won; and zeal, which affects basically everything. Traits are innate and gained over time, often according to what your character does. Fleeing from battle, for instance, might get you branded a coward, which might have implications in diplomacy or on your troops' morale, that kind of thing. When your character levels up, you'll get a point to spend on followers, which is where CA say the deepest customization will happen. You can level up a general's quartermaster to increase their campaign movement and drop their upkeep costs, for instance, or you can train up a priest to bolster a scheming governor's loyalty. Number 8, War Fervour. War weariness has been expanded from Attila Age of Charlemagne. It's now a sliding scale with weariness on the one hand and fervour on the other. If you've been at peace for too long, your people will get restless and start demanding some action. Too much of a good thing, however, and as before, they'll start getting equally upset and you'll suffer public order penalties if you've spent too long on the warpath. Number 9, regions. Regions are also getting shaken up. Each has a capital which has several slots for developing infrastructure and works mostly as before. Lesser settlements are now very different though. Each is only a single slot representing really very small hamlets or estates. They are mostly for resource production, and the buildings available there will vary depending on the region. Regional capitals depend to some extent on those settlements, which has implications for your siege tactics. If a capital is looking like a tough nut to crack, you'll be able to weaken it substantially by roaming the surrounding countryside and taking its estates. When you finally do come to besiege a capital, CA say we can look forward to, and I quote, a ton of unique siege maps. And that about does it. 9 things you should know about Thrones of Britannia, the first Total War Saga. What do you think? It's an interesting mix, isn't it, of stuff retained from Attila and developed, evolved, expanded in interesting ways, and things copied in from Warhammer, stuff like factional variations and character development. Let us know what you think down in the comments section below. Let us know what has you excited or skeptical. Subscribe to the PCGamesN YouTube channel for plenty more Total War content and PC gaming content in general. Give us a like if you found that useful or interesting, and until we see you next time, thanks for watching and take care.